Hello, and welcome to Budget Commander. On this channel, we'll discuss Magic the Gathering topics with a focus on playing Commander on a budget. We'll cover things like deck building, top cards, deck techs, and more. Let's get started. Hey friends, today we got a budget build of Greven Predator Captain. This is specifically 2DH, meaning all the cards in the deck are $2 or under, with the exception of the Commander, who can be $5 or under. Greven is a 5 to cast human warrior. Power and toughness are 5/5 with menace. And Greven Predator Captain gets plus X plus 0, where X is the amount of life you've lost this turn. Whenever Greven attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you draw cards equal to that creature's power, and you lose life equal to that creature's toughness. The goal of this deck is to knock people out with commander damage. So we want to attack with Greven, sacrifice a creature with a lot of power and low toughness, so we're drawing a lot of cards off of it, pumping Greven up, and hopefully knocking players out in 1 or possibly 2 hits. We're going to go through the deck, talking first about accelerants. These are cards that help us get to our game plan faster, give us more mana, hopefully earlier than our opponents. And I told you our game plan already. Then we'll talk about cards that will interfere with our opponent's game plans, and then cards that provide consistency. Not very many in this deck, so we're really relying heavily on Greven getting at least 1 sacrifice before our opponents remove him. So hopefully we can give him haste, or our opponents just leave him alone. Lastly, we'll talk about the lands, the mana base, how we're gonna cast the spells in this deck. So, accelerants, we got Charcoal Diamond, Guardian Idol, and Mind Stone, all cost 2, and can tap to add either black or colorless. The Mind Stone we can sacrifice to draw us extra cards. The Guardian we can pay 2 to give us a creature, whether we need a blocker or a sacrifice outlet for Greven. And then the Diamond gives us black, which is great. Star Compass enters tapped, but can give us black or red as long as we have a mountain or a swamp on the battlefield. Darkstar Ingot gives us any of our colors. And then Fractured Power Stone gives us a colorless, comes in at 2, so we like that. The upside is that if we're playing Plane Chase, we can roll a plane or die an extra time. Not typical, but some playgroups love to play Plane Chase along with their commander decks. Then we have Pristine Talisman, another mana rock, but this one gains us life, so it's going to give us or help sustain us a little bit longer, since we do have a fair number of cards that do pay life for some kind of benefit, so this just allows us to do more of that. Rakdos Locket gives us both our colors. We can sack it to draw some cards, and then Worn Power Stone enters tapped, but when we tap it we get 2 colorless. Wayfarer's Bauble is going to help us get an extra land to the battlefield early. Nightscape Familiar is a cost reducer for our red spells. It also is a great chump blocker. It can just sit out there, pay 2, regenerate it over and over again. And then Burnished Heart also helps us get a couple of extra lands to the battlefield early. Dark Ritual, Mana Geyser, and Cabal Ritual all help give us extra mana. Dark Ritual gives us essentially 2 extra mana. Pay a black, you get 3. Mana Geyser is expensive in that it costs 5, but we're going to gain a red for each tapped land our opponents control. In a 4-player pod, by turn 5, if you're the last one to go, this could potentially be maybe 15 mana, maybe more, maybe less, somewhere around there. So big plays after Mana Geyser. And then Cabal Ritual gives us an extra 1. We really want to play it after we have Threshold, which is when you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Not hard to do after we've sacrificed 1 creature to Greven, since we're usually going to be having to discard cards during our cleanup step. Then we're getting into our game plan. These are the cards that are going to help us to make Greven get in for combat damage, do more damage, and also help us to draw cards. So the Lupine Prototype just costs 2 for a 5/5. We're not really planning to attack or block with it, but we are hoping to sacrifice it. 5 cards for 2 mana. It's a pretty good trade. Wall of Blood is great because we can choose how much to pay into it, so we can really decide how much we want to attack for with Greven, whether we want to make him 10 or 11 to help us get that combat damage, that 21 combat damage. Then we have the Arc Runner, a 5/1 for 3. That is another great sacrifice fodder for Greven. Lightning Skelemental, a 6/1. All three of these actually are just sacrifice fodder for Greven. The upside to the Lightning Skelemental is that we can choose to attack with it if we know we're going to be able to get in and force a player to discard 2 cards, which can be pretty brutal. 2 of these we do have to sacrifice at the end of at our end step, so you want to be careful about when you play those so that you can get the benefit off of Greven or just get the damage in that you know you need to. Inferno Hellion, Impetuous Devils, and Blistering Firecat, there's just more sacrifice fodder for Greven. The Impetuous Devils does come with the upside of being able to force an opponent to block with a creature, but both the Devils and the Firecat we sacrifice at end of turn, and then the Inferno Hellion gets to stay out as long as we don't attack or block with it. So it's pretty big body. If we need to, we can block with it. Otherwise, we're hoping to sacrifice it to Greven. All of these have a lot of power and low toughness, so we're not going to lose a lot of life, but draw a ton of cards off them. Rite of the Raging Storm just gives us a ton of gas, a 5/1 every turn that we can sacrifice to Greven. 5 cards and 1 life, pumping him up for 5 damage is awesome. Molten Steel Dragon, another one of those cards that we can choose how much to pay into it, and then that's how much we're going to be able to pump Greven up. Bloodsworn Steward is also great because he gives Greven haste. We really want to be able to attack with him that first turn he comes in so that we can sacrifice a creature to Greven, pumping him up, but most importantly drawing us more cards so that we can filter the cards that best help us in that particular spot in the game. Loxodon Warhammer and the Cartouche of Ambition give Greven lifelink, another creature too, but likely we're going to be equipping or attaching Greven with these because he's getting in for a lot of damage, and then it makes that life loss not as bad. Fire Shrieker gives double strike, so it'll be really easy to finish off a player with 1 hit. If we have Greven equipped with this, we pump him with 1 other big creature, boom, somebody's dead if they can't block him. Blessing of Belzenlok, another way to get lifelink on Greven. Tainted Strike gives Greven infect, so makes it even easier for us to knock a player out. Instead of just dealing 21 damage, we can just get to that magic number of 10. And then Assault Strobe, for 1 we can give a creature double strike. It does come in sorcery speed, so it's a little bit slower, but it only costs us 1, so that's the upside. Grotesque Mutation, another life linking instant. Tamir Battle Rage, another way to give double strike. We don't have to cast this on Greven, we could put it on something else. We just have to read the situation. And then Skullcrack helps us get around those players who play those fog effects, making it so that they can't prevent damage, and it deals an additional 3 damage, which is great. Gravitic Punch allows us to choose a creature, so usually you pump Greven up, make him big, and then it allows us to just get in a bunch of damage on a player. We also can cast it again from our graveyard. Anger, as we want to get into our graveyard so that it can give Greven haste. And then Vorak Battle Horns is awesome in this deck because it essentially says Greven's unblockable. You equip Greven with this, and then he can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. He comes with Menace, which means he needs to be blocked. To get blocked, he needs 2 creatures blocking him. So effectively makes him unblockable. Key to the City, another way to make Greven unblockable, can also help refill our hand. Not really what we're looking for, since Greven is probably going to be just getting sacrifice bait, but if we don't have anything to sacrifice, then this is a great way to find something. Glaring Spotlight can help give Greven hexproof. We have to time it when we're giving it to him, but can protect him from our opponent's spells that would target him and kill him off. And then Kaya's Ghost Form, kind of a newer card, which gets around all these exile effects. You enchant Greven with the Ghost Form, and then if he gets exiled, you can actually return him to the battlefield under your control. So the enchantment goes away, but you get around those exile effects, which are so common in Commander. It also does the same for if he dies. Rush of Vitality we're using to protect him for indestructible. We can also use it to give him lifelink, which is great. Not of this world counters a spell that targets Greven. It's really great if our opponent's waiting to the ideal time, waiting, at the last second to cast it at instant speed during combat after we've already pumped Greven up. We can actually protect him for free. And then Sangromancer is a 3/3 flyer that is fine to sacrifice to Greven, but mostly we want it to just sit out on the battlefield and drain our opponents out when their creatures die. Kind of helps stall out our opponents, and if anybody's discarding cards, also gains us some extra life, which is great. And then Rite of Consumption is just a way to sacrifice a creature to gain some extra life. Greven's been put back in the command zone a bunch of times, and he's now costs 9 or 11. This helps us give us the longevity to stay in the game by being able to sacrifice one of our bigger creatures, shoot another player, and gain us some life. Great for those creatures that we're going to be sacrificing at the end step anyway. How we're going to interfere with our opponent's plans. These are cards that are going to remove our opponent's permanents. Creatures specifically here, we have Fleshbag Marauder, forcing everybody to sack something. Terminate, destroy something, can't regenerate it. Vendetta does the same for a non-black creature. We do lose life equal to that creature's toughness, but for 1 black, that's a great trade. Ashes to Ashes exiles 2 creatures at the cost of 5 life. Steal effects, so Active Treason is great in this deck because we can steal our opponent's creature and then sacrifice it to Greven, pumping Greven up and also opening the field for him because now there's less blockers. Ravenous Chupacabra gives us a destroy a creature on a body, which is great. And then we have Captivating Crew, which allows us to steal our opponent's creatures turn over turn. You just pay 4 and then sacrifice them to Greven. It's great. Flametongue Kavu, a big power, low toughness creature that comes in and shoots another creature for 4 damage. Mass Mutiny allows us to steal a creature from each of our opponents. We have Thud, which allows us to sack creatures and deal damage to any target. So if we steal our opponent's creature with some of those effects we already seen, you can do that. But also you can sack one of your big creatures if you have, multiple targets to sack to Greven. This is a great way to use Thud. Soul's Fire is awesome. You sacrifice something, make Greven huge, and then you can shoot anything. So if you needed to take care of a planeswalker, great. Take care of a creature, you can do that. Lower an opponent's life total, Soul's Fire does that too. So Soul's Fire is great in this deck. And we have Fling, another similar effect to Thud. Sacrifice a creature, deal damage equal to its power to any target. And then lastly, we have Ingaruk's Wake. This is going to destroy all of our opponent's creatures, opening up the field for Greven so that he can't get blocked, and really allows us to control the game in terms of which we can basically choose after we've cast this usually which player is going to be out of the game next. Cards that provide consistency, like I said, not very many. Greven, so we're really relying on being able to get him to sacrifice something at least once to restock our hand. If not, we have Underworld Connections, which we can pay a life to draw a card, and then Unearth, which can get us back any one of our 3 mana cost or less creatures. We also can cycle it if we want to. And then now we're into the lands. So we have Akum Refuge, Bloodfell Caves, Cinder Barrens. All these come in tapped, but they can give us a black or a red. 2 of them gain a life when they enter, which is great. Rakdos Guildgate, Canyon Slough sounds good. Enter tapped, and they give us black or red. We can also sacrifice the Slough. And then Rakdos Carnarium's a bounce land, so it enters, it's going to return a land to your hand, but when you tap it, you get both a black and a red. Foreboding Ruins enters the battlefield tapped unless we reveal a swamp or mountain from our hand, and it can give us both black-red. Command Tower obviously is great, black-red. And then Exotic Orchard, possibility to give us colorless, but also comes in untapped and could give us a black or red depending on what our opponents are playing. Then we have Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, which fetch us the colors that we need. Ash Barrens, which can give us a colorless, or we can cycle it for 1. And then we have Jund Panorama and Grixis Panorama. If you don't mind playing the off-color fetches this way, then those are great because we can tap them for a colorless, and then when we don't need that mana, just pay 1 and thin out our deck a little bit by fetching up a swamp or a mountain. Myriad Landscape enters tapped. Can also tap for a colorless, but we can also sacrifice it to get 2 mountains or 2 swamps to the battlefield tap, so ramps us out a little bit. Temple of the False God also ramps us as long as we have 5 lands. It taps for 2 colors. Rogue's Passage makes one of our creatures unblockable, probably Greven, but if you don't need it for Greven, you can also use it on one of your other big body creatures. Flamekin Village is mostly there for that bottom ability. Pay a red, tap it, and give Greven haste. But you can also use it if you need a red mana in a pinch. And then lastly, these cards give us a little more consistency. Castle Locklane, if we're getting low on cards, we can pay 3 mana to draw a card. We are going to lose life equal to the number of cards in our hand, so you're probably going to be using this when you're low. And then we have Memorial to Folly, which allows us to return a creature from our graveyard to our hand. Both of them can also add a black for us. Basics, we're running 11 mountains and 7 swamps. And then the average converted mana cost of the deck was 2.9. So on the lower end, which is great, especially for a Vultron, because you want to get out the gate hot and keep the pressure up. If this deck strategy looks fun for you, give it a try and let me know how it goes. Otherwise, let me know what kind of commander or which commander specifically you'd like to see next. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you next time. Peace! Thanks for watching. You can help support this channel by hitting that subscribe button. This will help keep you up to date on content from Budget Commander. If you liked the video, make sure you like the video. Leave me a comment with your thoughts on this topic. And if you think someone else could benefit from this video, feel free to share. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk with you next time.